Thanks for tuning in to the Harembe Today podcast. This is the 5th episode of our series exploring ethnic conflict in Ethiopia. This series will make the most sense if it's listened to in sequential order. So make sure you start with our introduction episode and follow the sequence from there. For now, we are only discussing events in Ethiopia prior to the country's new prime minister taking office. Now let's talk about Ethiopia's Somali region.
In other parts of Ethiopia, it is absolutely safe and fine. But in the Somali region, we are talking about a whole different issues, actually. The Somali region is actually the worst in terms of human rights and personal freedoms and democratic processes and all that stuff. So it is at the bottom. You cannot hope for like a Jeffersonian democracy like the US, but you're going to say like, why can't we just live as the Amharas and Oromos? Even if we don't have the same full-fledged development, why can't we at least just express our outrage and our frustrations and our fears rather than fearing for our own personal safety?
That's Mohamed Olad. He says fighting between government forces and the Ogaden National Liberation Front has made life in the Somali region unbearable.
You can just get killed your brother or your cousin or your nephew being a member of the ONLF rather than you being an ONLF or any other rebel group that is active in the region. So the security and personal freedoms and the rights of the Somali people are more in danger at this time than they actually been in any time.
The Ogaden National Liberation Front is a militant group fighting to make the Somali region an independent state.
Most Somalis don't even agree the idea of seceding from Ethiopia. Like, a lot of things have changed since the last 25 years. And then as time progresses, most people were up against the idea of seceding. And on top of that, rather than just the idea of seceding from the rest of Ethiopia, most people are not happy with their policies and what they stand for. One contentious point is that Ogaden is one tribe within the Somali people. They call it Ogaden. So most of the other Somalis were arguing for a long time, saying like, hey, this is not like a common cause for all of us. It seems like you guys fighting for the cause of specific tribe within our ethnic group, and you're actually pretending like this is like a cause for everybody. So why don't you change the name? Why don't you change the name for the country you're trying to create? Why don't you expand your leadership to include Somalis from every part of the region? And why don't you actually show us that you're actually trying to create a comprehensive, a plural state that would actually going to be a home for every Somali rather than one single tribe? And then that is actually what damaged their image within the Somali people, that they no longer have the support of most people, though actually people are really adamant in achieving their independence in some way or some form, either getting a full autonomy within the Ethiopian federal structure, that they have the right to self-govern, that nobody would gonna dictate for what they do or how they do things and things like that. And it goes back to this issue that Abdi Mohamed Olad is seen by most people as someone who is imposed by Tigrayan generals from somewhere, that he no longer represents their interests. He just is there to make sure he does the bidding for them. So Somali people are really strong in terms of their independence and all that stuff, but they still don't agree to what ONLF stands for. And when I see independence, it doesn't only mean seceding from Ethiopia, but they're actually very independent people, and they want to make sure their independence in whatever form or shape it is, but they don't still actually agree in most cases in what ONLF stands for.
In 2007, the Ogaden National Liberation Front attacked a Chinese-operated oil field in eastern Ethiopia. 74 workers were killed and 7 were kidnapped, according to a report by The Guardian News. In response to the attacks, the federal government established a special police force, also known as the Liyu Police.
The special Liyu Police force was first created for a specific reason, that actually they were going to be a very rapid force that were going to be very agile in terms of fighting those rebel groups, because the National Defense Force cannot actually fight them effectively and efficiently. And they were going to be like deployed pretty quick from wherever there is a hot spot or there's an issue. And then they actually done pretty good job in that aspect. They actually pushed back the momentum of the UNLF.
The Liyu Police have been accused of silencing opposition groups and committing human rights abuses, including raping and torturing civilians. With the recent breakdown between the federal and regional governments, it's hard to know if any of these allegations have been verified by independent and credible sources. Most of the allegations come from Human Rights Watch, whose reports are clearly unbalanced and rely heavily on oral testimony from people affiliated with opposition groups who have been working for years to undermine the legitimacy of the Ethiopian government. Harambe today requested an interview with Human Rights Watch to discuss this topic and didn't hear back.
The Somali people suffer under intense security situation that actually threw their personal and individual and group rights out of the window, that actually let somebody come and dictate and do whatever they want on them and perpetuate whatever violence on these innocent civilians, and they were never going to be able to pay a price for it. So that is the problem with the Liyu police force. They were supposed to fight rebel groups and anti-peace elements, but they actually inflicted so many pain on the Somali people who were actually had nothing to do with whatever they are actually on a personal terms actually. And also the National Defense Forces was not also better. They actually displaced villages and massacred so many people.
A 2016 report by an independent Norway-based government body called Landinfo cites anonymous sources saying that the Liyu police follow traditional methods rather than institutional norms of maintaining law and order. It also states the federal government wanted to disband the police force in 2015, and that pressure from the federal government resulted in the police force improving its behavior.
They become like very, very politicized, and they actually become like a personal army for the regional president rather than an official security element that has its own rules, regulations, and command system. And that actually created so many complexities even for the Ethiopian government.
In 2017, tensions between the Oromia and Somali regional states escalated, resulting in hundreds of deaths. A report by the United Nations estimates the number of displacements due to conflict between the two regions at 1.1 million as of mid-April 2018.
The Liyu police has been seriously accused of being part of these border conflicts.
A news report by the BBC cites Oromo regional officials as blaming the Liyu police for the violence that broke out in 2017. But Somali regional officials refuted the claims and said Oromo officials who sympathized with outlawed rebel groups were responsible.
And then the Ethiopian government cannot even do anything about that unless they create another security crisis within the region and between the federal government and the Somali regional government, because they become so much powerful in terms of numbers, in terms of equipment and ammunition, in terms of political involvement, that the leaders of the Liyu police and all those close political associations, all of these things created so much complexity that nobody can actually do anything specifically about the special police force without actually creating so many other issues down the road.
Beyond that, one of the possible reasons for the tensions is the ongoing border dispute between the two regions. A referendum was held in 2004 to delineate the border, but the results of the referendum were never enforced.
It is not like people in Oromia region and in Somali region are allowed to vote, but actually the vote was supposed to be casted by people who live in those disputed areas. So they were actually asking a simple choice. Do you guys want to join Somali region, Oromia region? And then the result would determine which region this locality would going to join. So what happened is that OBDO had very huge resources and very organized party at the time compared to the ruling party for the Somali region. So they actually outmaneuvered and out-organized the Somali Regional Democratic People's Party. And then they actually managed to actually transport people from different part of Oromia and then deploy those people in that specific locality just like they were actual people from that locality. So, say for example, if you have a 10,000 strong small town, and there's like 6,000 Somalis or 4,000 Oromos or who favor this or that, and then if you have like a huge chunk of people from different part of the region who have actually their choice is predetermined just to tilt the favor to Oromia, then that results in so many small Somali populated towns to actually be transferred to Oromia. They never accepted that. The result is random, actually determined for them, but they never accepted. They were in denial this whole time, and that has resulted like series of clashes between the local people and local governments, and then the Liyu Police and all those people from the Somali region were actually also hiding at this, like they were supporting their own people in their fight for their own land and their own resources.
Ethiopia has 9 regional states, but only 4 of the regional states have representatives that make up the ruling coalition. The ruling coalition is called the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, or EPRDF for short.
The parliament, the federal cabinet, and the executive branch, and all that stuff, they're just like a rubber stamp for whatever EPRDF actually decides. So in some way, the fate of the Somali people is being decided by EPRDF and those who are at that table. The 5 satellite states, if they're putting into the fold, they may create more problems and actually disrupt that power dynamics within the EPRDF. And if they're out of EPRDF, EPRDF is not losing any pain over them. So why actually bother? While actually you can control full freedom of power and disregard all the other disruptions that may come from, including those satellite parties within the EPRDF umbrella. So that is the main reasoning behind it, because they don't need those satellite companies to rule the country in an effective way. And also the fact that the incorporation of those satellite parties within EPRDF may also create more disruptions and fluid power dynamic that they don't want to deal with it. So that is, I think, the 2 reasons they're not trying to incorporate those satellite parties. But the Somali region and the Somali people are also missing and are not benefiting from this arrangement, because it seems like they're getting dictation from someone else and they don't have a voice. Nobody's also trying to amend that, so that's the frustration that most people will going to tell you.
Some suspect the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front has a role in the conflict between the Somali and Oromia regions. The Tigrayan People's Liberation Front is one of the 4 parties that make up the ruling coalition.
The Somali people, they're divided on this. Some of them have different opinions, but they actually share one common thread, that they have nothing against the Oromo people. Like, they don't see this as a fight between Somalis and Oromos. That's actually what most people get lost, either in translation, or they have some agenda when they actually put things like a conflict between the Oromo ethnic and the Somali ethnic people. 99% of the people understand the Somali people and the Oromo people are actually probably people that share history, culture, they share border, they share so many other things. They are like more similar than they are different. So that's one thing. But also, what they only differ is the argument and the question of that, whether the TPLF is a mastermind of this or behind this and using Abdi Ilay and the special police forces just to win some power struggle going within their own party. And some people believe that wholeheartedly. They think like this is a TPLF masterminded agenda, that actually they're using that in their favor in disregard of human life, in disregard of Somali people's life, in disregard of Oromo people's life, in disregard of national safety and peace, all that stuff. And then there are those who believe that actually Liyu Police are actually defending Somali territories and Somali people. So they may gonna get support or tacit support from TPLF and all those other people, but they're still doing some legitimate thing that they're actually defending their probably people of Somali from Oromia, from Oromo people and Oromo regional security apparatus who actually cross the border or pillage villages or displace people and all sorts of that. And when people talk about the conflicts between the Oromia and Somali region, they talk about the border conflicts. But actually, there was actually conflict that actually transcended borders. Actually, some conflicts is happening within Oromia region, like 200 kilometers from the nearest border spot. And then in those instances, Somali people have been killed within Oromia region, like almost 300 Somalis have lost their lives within that period of time, just because they were Somalis and they were not involved in anything closer to border conflicts. So the question would be, even if those border conflicts were involved by or TPLF were behind that, what happened to those 300 Somalis who live in Oromia region? That has nothing to do with border conflict. That has nothing to do with special police force being around their locality. That has nothing to do with TPLF or they are not part of the regional government and all that stuff. And the other issue that actually is very emotional in this is the displacement of 1 million Oromos from the Somali region by the Liyu Police force and the regional government and all that stuff. Though they were pretending like they're protecting the safety of these people and they are actually transferring them to a safe places, but actually everybody knew that that wasn't the case because the Somali people have never posed any danger to those Oromos who live among them. Probably they actually lived within the same house. In some cases, they were partners in business. In some cases, they were neighbors. So they have never posed any danger to their Oromo people. So it all raises the question of the wisdom of transporting 1 million people, displacing 1 million people from their homes and where they lived and from their work. So that is the two other questions that were going to arise aside from the border conflict, is the death and the massacres of 300 Somalis within Oromia region. That was massacred in a very brutal way and sometimes looked like very organized manner in the way they killed and the way they were actually those massacres were executed. And also the displacement of 1 million Oromos from the Somali region under the pretext of protecting them.
To be clear, there's no credible evidence to determine who is behind the violence.
The Somali region is located in a very strategic part of the country. It's where most of the trade routes pass. It has a very large mass that are actually appropriate for agriculture, for natural resources, gas and oil. And it has like two giant rivers that cross through the border to the region. So all those actually give it unmatched opportunity in terms of being part of the growth of the country, but they have never been any part of growth or economic opportunity.
Ethiopia is working to develop its oil and natural gas industry using resources from the Somali region. Critics have accused the government of exploiting the region to accomplish this goal.
On all the localities that gas exploration is a very dispersed part of the region that actually there is no like towns and village and all that stuff that actually would gonna be severely impacted in terms of those exploration works. But the other problem that is associated with that exploration work that's going on in parts of the region is the fact that the processes that have these exploration licenses have been granted, the way the Somali region and the Somali people have never been consulted, the way the Somali people have never been part of this, while actually it involves their own resources, would actually gonna create troubles down the road. They're in the exploration stage. They have never started developing actually or extracting those resources. But actually, the moment those resources started extracted, and the Somali people realize they are not actually beneficiary of all this process, that's actually when actually things will gonna explode. But now, as far as exploration goes, it never have impacted so many people in terms of people that are displaced by these exploration works.
We are going to end this episode with Mohamed Olad's take on the representation and integration of the Somali region into the larger Ethiopia.
Somali people doesn't have a problem with integrating to other parts of the country. They actually really loving and welcoming people. So people from different parts of the country go to the Somali region. They live in there, they work in there, they intermingle with the local community, and they don't face any serious discrimination or anything that would actually gonna raise those kind of questions. But the problem mostly arises from the other Ethiopians accepting the Somali people as equally being an Ethiopian. So you can travel in some other parts of the country, you're gonna tell them where you're from. They were gonna figure out that you're a Somali, and then they were gonna ask you, "Are you from Mogadishu?" And you're gonna be like, "Oh, are you really kidding me? Mogadishu is not part of Ethiopia. And what the hell I'm doing here if I'm not an Ethiopian?" So the fact that you're a Somali by default goes that you must be a foreigner, you must be coming from Somalia, or you must be coming from really far place. So it is not a question of an integration, but it is a question of accepting that the Somalis are as an Ethiopian as any other Ethiopian, and they don't have to prove that more than any other Ethiopian to anybody. So Somalis accept being in Ethiopia. They welcome all Ethiopians to their homes, to their workplaces, to their worship places. Some of them are even part of the regional bureaucracy, but it is not the same case when it comes to other Ethiopians accepting Somalis as being an Ethiopian, as being their brotherly neighbor, as also being as Ethiopian as they are themselves.